It's summer. Finally the sun is shining. The beer's cold, and that means you just want to kick back and crack out some good old hard rock and heavy metal. So what do you reach for? Well, some Guns N' Roses, some Mötley Crüe, some Thin Lizzy, some Dio, maybe a bit of Whitesnake. Well look, there's a band coming to Ireland in July that are going to give you exactly all of that. A group of guys who were in those very bands. We're talking some serious names here. A supergroup of guys that were there in the heady days of cock rock and who haven't forgotten what it's all about to swagger out on stage and put on a show. Today we're talking to the Dead Daisies, specifically their bassist Marco Mendoza, who was formerly in Thin Lizzy and Whitesnake, and it gives me enormous pleasure to say this, guitar hero Doug Aldrich, who was of course none other than Ronnie James Dio's right-hand man. And as you'll hear in the podcast, he has a strange tale or two about his former boss. You're listening to the Metal Insight Podcast, episode 27, from metalireland.com. I'm your host, Earl Grey, and I'm delighted to say that the Dead Daisies themselves have sponsored this episode for the very simple reason that they want to get you down to their two gigs in Ireland in July, in Dublin and in Belfast. But look, first some explaining. This is a supergroup. It's had a load of famous members through its ranks. And it's kind of like one of those old rock family trees that you used to see with the weird writing and the strange lines. Remember those? They've only been going a couple of years, but you'd still probably need one with this band. But anyway, enough from me. I'm going to hand you over to Marco Mendoza, the band's bassist, to explain how it all started.
Well, I got to tell you, man, the way the Dead Daisies came together, I really believe in, and not to get too deep and spiritual and all that, I really believe that there was a sense of purpose there to the way the whole thing came together. I was out on the road with Thin Lizzy, and we had made the transition to Black Star Riders. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember, if you recall, but Brian Downey had decided he didn't want to tour anymore, mm-hmm. He wanted to go home. And so we found it hard to continue. I mean, it's always been a touchy subject anyway, touchy topic to continue the Thin Lizzy legacy without fail.
Of course.
But there's always been a question mark. But we've always paid respect to those years and to him as an artist and as an entity and in the forefront of what Thin Lizzy was and the legacy and the history, the legend. So we've always been quite aware of the bit of controversy. Nevertheless, we try to go out there and do the music the best we can, represent the songs. And at the end of the day, Karen, in my opinion, people want to hear the songs. Mm-hmm. That's what's mm-hmm. stronger than anything. That's stronger than any political view, that any controversy, any whatever business situation that you can think of. So that moves on. So we were in the transition into the Black Star Riders, and without getting into details, let's just say that my opinion of the whole thing changed a bit. My point of view. I was honored to be part of the Thin Lizzy legacy in the camp and the lineup, and then when we kind of had to change tracks and move into the Black Star Riders thing. I don't want to say I lost interest. It's a great bunch of guys, great writing, great songs, great everything. But for me personally, I lost a little bit of steam. Let's just say mm-hmm. Brian was gone. We couldn't get a better drummer. Jimmy DeGrasse came in, and then Darren was gone, and all of a sudden it was just Scott and me from the '94 lineup, mm-hmm. and. Mm-hmm. I just lost a little bit of steam and a little bit of interest, and I won't get into all the details. So let's just say the bigger picture became smaller for me, mm-hmm. and we were in Australia touring what would be the last tour that we did as Thin Lizzy. I want to say that was in spring of 13, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on the Mötley Crüe Kiss package down in Australia. We were having a blast. It was a great tour. And the opening band was David Lowy, our guitar player now and founder with the Dead Daisies right now.
Mm-hmm.
He was opening the whole show with his band, and I had to say, I started noticing the songs, and I started noticing the vibe and the whole thing. And we, again, because we're spending a lot of time on the road, backstage and traveling together, we all became friends, and we started talking. And before the tour was ended, to make a long story even longer, before the tour ended, David Lowy and his manager, David Edwards, approached me and said, "Hey, we really dig what you do, and we're doing this project, and it's called the Dead Daisies, and we have a few songs. We're going to go into the studio. We're doing an album, and we would love, if you're interested, for you to collaborate with us." And I said, "Of course, I'm always looking to do some cool things."
The rest is history, and because of that sort of unexpected Australian-American hookup, some incredible names were persuaded to join the band. Who were they? Well, we had Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses. He was in them for a while. Listen to this. Yep, you know his keyboards. They also had Richard Fortus, who was in Guns N' Roses and played on Chinese Democracy. They had Brian Tichy, who's still with them. He was in Whitesnake and Ozzy Osbourne. The list goes on and on until it got even better when none other than John Corabi, once of Mötley Crüe, joined. And he's still their current lead singer. But I'm curious about one thing. How is it that a bunch of guys from LA, from the Sunset Strip, old-time 80s rockers, how is it that these guys can really work with a bunch of comparatively unknown rockers from the other side of the world?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Kieran. I don't mean to be judgmental in any way. I don't consider myself on the Sunset Strip at all. I for some reason, that whole movement, I missed it. Yeah. I was getting sober I got sober in 87 because I had problems with heroin, cocaine, and drug addiction and alcoholism. So for me, it was so important to stay away from that scene for obvious reasons.
Yes.
So when that whole thing was blowing up, I was the guy that would come in and make my appearance and then be scared shitless and run away because I didn't want to start using or drinking again.
Yeah.
And so I kind of missed that whole thing. But no, on the other hand, Australia has such a strong musical scene, such a strong rock and roll heritage. A lot of things come from there. A lot of artists have come from there, and a lot of great music have come from there if you do your homework, and people don't realize,
I mean, I suppose what I'm conscious of is that the Dead Daisies, is it a project? Is it a family? Or is it a band?
I know, and we get asked that question a lot. I would say it falls under all categories. I think now we've all developed friendships. If you think about it, I mean, I've known Brian Tichy. I've used him in my solo recordings. He's one of the quintessential drummers of our time, Brian Tichy. He's in the fold. John Corabi I've known since late 80s, early 90s when he participated in that Mötley Crüe album, which happens to be one of my favorite albums. I've known him since then. That was 94 or something like that, 95. So we've been friends, and I've been a fan of his for a while, so he's in there. And then Doug Aldrich obviously, Doug and I have done so much work in the past, including Whitesnake and other projects.
Stop just there. Did someone say Doug Aldrich? Yep, it's him. It's one of the most preeminent lead guitar players of the modern age, and several ages before that as well. I've seen Doug play twice. I had my head taken off my shoulders when I saw him in a small club in Belfast some years ago. He is a phenomenal lead guitar player, and he's joined the Daisies on both the latest album and for the live shows that are upcoming. So I thought we better find out from him what he thinks about playing in this new rock family collective band, call it what you will. Let's hear from Doug.
I've known John Corabi since 1979.
Wow, that's quite a long time. Yeah.
He when I was in high school, he was a singer in a cover band. A friend of mine was in the band, and I remember meeting him for the first time and then seeing him on stage. He was great, and he was always such a cool guy. And he still is. You know, he's just really, as we say, or maybe it's a saying that we stole from you guys, from the Irish or English or something. But he is salt of the earth. That guy. I met Marco actually prior to Whitesnake. I met him in mid '90s, and he and I had wives that were friends, and we had never worked together until Whitesnake. And he is just such a giant on stage. I mean, he owns that side of the stage. I remember it was difficult for Red Beach a little bit because Marco was so. It's just like I say, he was all over the place. He's a giant. Not like he moves around and runs around, but just like he owns it. He owns that place. And I love his, he comes from a different background musically, and so I love his take on stuff, like what he does with the Dead Daisies, the new record, for example. The bass lines are really, it's simple rock and roll, it's just a rock record, straight up, no frills, just in your face rock record. But Marco definitely puts a little bit more of a melodic spin on it with his playing.
So the Dead Daisies music, it's not complicated. It's fun, it's open, it's ballsy, it's honest hard rock. And I put that to Doug that rather than the madcap, down to the wire hard rock of Dio on stage, or the grand and sort of more sweeping sounds of Whitesnake, that the Dead Daisies, their wide open sound must have given him a great canvas to work on.
It is. It's like a big open football pitch, and so one of the things that I really wanted to do is to leave it as open as I could. I didn't want to go crazy on it because with Whitesnake, as you said, there's always been a lot of overdubs and just, to be honest,
just stuff really.
It was more than I liked actually, but I wasn't. I was not the producer of those records. I was co-producing, and David was in charge. And if David said, "Look, let's put another guitar part on," I would maybe say, "I think it's fine like it is," but he would eventually say, "Okay, we're going to put another guitar part on it." And eventually, it would become difficult to mix because you had so many guitars.
Yeah.
And with Dead Daisies, I really, not to say anything negative about those records because I'm very proud of them, but I think that always in hindsight, you listen to something and you go, "I wish I would have done this or that." And so with Dead Daisies, I wanted to keep that pitch as open as I could, and basically just put in things that were necessary, not just trying to fill space. I mean, so sometimes just letting the riff breathe is good.
But what about the man at the back of the band? We've heard Doug and Marco now talk about Brian Tichy, the drummer they really, really wanted in the band, the guy who used to be in Ozzy Osbourne and in Whitesnake. Doug is really impressed by his playing.
One of the things where I got a chance to play with a lot of drummers was doing a Metallica tribute record. I was kind of like the MD on this record, and just because Metallica parts were complicated, they wanted somebody to come in and be like really knowledgeable about how the song went. And
you probably know more than them these days.
I don't know about that, but I had fun doing it, and I never really knew that much about Metallica, but then after learning those songs, I really respected them. But a lot of drummers came in, and it was really interesting to see, guys, how you thought they were. They played differently than what you thought, and they were all really good, but all really different. But Tichy is just, he just plays. He's got such a great groove, and he's got a natural. The way that he strikes the drum is not so loud. It's more about tone, which is so cool because it looks like he's really hammering the drums, but it does sometimes. But for the most part, his snare sound is what I love so much because he's really into it. He's like he analyzes snare sounds of different guys like Alex Van Halen or John Bonham or Neil Peart, whatever his name is, however you say it, and
but he really gets it, and he has this amazing drum sound and drum tone, and his groove is great, and he's a guitar player too, so he plays a lot of fills that are really easy to play with for a guitar player.
Look, let's be honest here. There's simply no mistaking what kind of a band the Dead Daisies are. You may as well break out the guy liner and the shiny bangles for your wrists, because these guys, they're original cock rockers, the real thing, and they haven't given up that image in any way, shape or form. The question is, does that really work nowadays? Isn't there a risk that the world's kind of left all that behind? I put it to both Marco and Doug that there's a chance they could be seen as maybe something of a throwback. Do you mind if I ask, right, and this is a kind of a devil's advocate question, okay? There will be...
No, I like delicate questions.
Okay.
I'm very delicate.
Well, there will be people who see, you know, your image and your music, and they'll think this is pastiche. This is like a comicalized version of a time gone by, and that it's kind of rockers who just never let that era go. What would you say to people who see that and maybe think that?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, you know, the bottom line, man, you're never going to make everybody happy. And there's people out there, especially now with social media, and I say this delicately. I want to be delicate about this, and I also want to be respectful, but there's a lot of people out there that spend a lot of time on social media that now have a voice, to be honest, to give their points of view, and that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. We're not worried about it. We are who we are. We're doing what we're doing. Obviously, there's people that are really digging what we're doing, and that's what we need to pay attention to. The people that don't, we just say, well, all right, you can't win them all, you move on. Yeah. That's all. I choose not to spend a lot of time worrying about the negative energy.
No, life's too short. Well, look, tell me this. I mean,
yeah, man. I get really sensitive when people start knocking down the pop artists that we have today for whatever the reason. It's almost like human nature. We want to focus on the weak sides, you know. What about the fact that they can stand up in front of thousands of people and deliver and sing like they can? What about that?
Yeah.
What about the difference that they are making, whether it's pop or this or jazz, whatever? What about the people that they are touching?
Well, what about all the speculation in recent months? I mean, we're talking about AC/DC, we're talking about Guns N' Roses. One person who can't stand up and deliver is Axl Rose because he broke his leg, but he can sit down and deliver because he has silenced more than a few critics.
And he's going to be standing. Watch him have the best Guns N' Roses, and we have a couple of ex-dead Daisies there. Guns N' Roses is going to have the best time of their career now. It's coming. Their numbers, they're gonna blow everybody's mind, because at the end of the day, Karen, it's about the songs, the music that people want to hear, you know. 2 or 3 generations show up. We've had the opportunity to hang out with Kiss a lot, and it's mind-blowing how you see 3 and 4 generations.
Yeah.
The grandparents, their kids, and their kids are showing up with Kiss makeup on. That's undeniable.
As far as the image goes, I mean, we were all influenced by the '70s and the '60s too, and then there's, you know, we lived and played through the '80s, so there's probably like a little bit of all of that mixed in to the image of Daisies. And some guys, I mean, like David Lowe's he's actually got maybe a little bit of I don't know, almost a punk background in some senses with bands he played with in Australia. And, you know, Marco comes from a different place. I don't think Marco was there on the Strip in the 80s.
Well, I think he has some very good reasons why he wasn't on the Strip in the 80s. We were talking about it earlier. I think he was keen to avoid that, you know.
But he brings a whole different thing. So it's got that flair, it's got that thing, and I think people can relate to it because it's just kind of honest rock and roll. It's not really like, I mean, we literally with this record we sat down in a room and we banged around probably 25 different ideas, and we all each had probably 25 others that we would have loved to have gotten to, but we kind of cut it off when we got a batch of songs that David Lowy said, look, these are the ones I'd really like to focus on, and so we decided, let's do those, and we made them. We worked on the arrangements and made some improvements to them, and then before you know it, the record's done. And it's like, so it's just really a moment of time with this group of individuals really doing it together in a room, from start to finish in 1 month.
Do you think there's enough? Do you think there's enough swagger in rock nowadays? Because you guys have a natural swagger because you just own the brief. You've been there, done it, bought the T-shirt 10 times over. But it seems to me that swagger has kind of gone. Everybody's a little more safe these days. What do you think? Rock needs a bit more attitude these days.
Well, I know I never thought about what you're saying that much, but I think that I like the swagger. When you listen to bands like Zeppelin and Van Halen and Aerosmith, they had that. And sometimes maybe with some of the bands like even bands that I like, bands like Nickelback or Foo Fighters or some of that stuff. I really like that stuff, but maybe it doesn't have as much swagger as like the Van Halen stuff. So it would be nice to see. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I haven't heard a lot of it, but this guy Nick Perry's got a new band called Mount Holly, and I heard one song and I really liked it, and he's definitely got swagger. So more of that would be cool, man.
Something I have to ask you is the last time I saw you guys and I think Def Leppard and Whitesnake. Look, you guys are guys in your 50s, and yet you look tighter and leaner than guys in their 20s. I mean, Phil Collins looks like a fucking bodybuilder, and you're there with your your waistcoat and no shirt and stuff like that, and you guys all look so lean. I mean, just tell me, growing older as a rocker, how on earth do you keep that up? I mean, do you have a personal trainer or something? I mean, how do you look like that?
I don't, and I could use one because it's always a struggle. It's like when I remember the times with Whitesnake where, we'd be off for 3 or 4 or 5 months, whatever, and you're getting ready for a tour, and you look down and you're like, well, I better get to the gym. You got a belly going and stuff, and beer belly or whatever, and you start to go to the gym. Once you're on the road, you're performing, you're moving, you're carrying luggage in and out of a hotel every day, and every day that you don't move, there's a gym in, just an elevator ride away, so you don't have to get in your car or something. So it's easy to go to the gym. But part of the reason to me also is that mentally it would help me, because the older I get, the more lonely I get on the road. I hate being away from my family. I hate it.
Yeah.
So I need to go to the gym, and I was away so much in Whitesnake, and it was damaging to relationships, and I did what I could to, keep my mind off it. But the bottom line is that you need to work out to feel good. You need to keep your head straight and have something to keep you occupied. Otherwise, you just go crazy. You end up just in the bar every day. That's okay.
This is a song from an empty heart. Let me know how you torn apart.
When I hear the Dead Daisies music, I think of kind of, maybe it is the California thing, maybe it's the Mexico thing, but I think in terms of summer, it's uplifting rock, right? In the way that rock used to be. It's uplifting rock with swagger. So when I hear something like Empty Heart or Devil Out of Time or something, or of course Mexico, I just think, fuck yeah, this is enjoyable rock and roll. What is your mission with the Daisies? I mean, you're not trying to write songs it's not confrontational. It seems to be always kind of uplifting and just punch in the air kind of stuff.
I'll tell you, when we first started recording, from the first day we started talking about recording and writing songs and all that, the common denominator we all had, and I think it's because we all came from that era, from the 70s and 80s, is we all tended to like the same bands, We all tended to love the Deep Purple, the Led Zeppelins, the Grand Funk Railroad, the the Allman Brothers Band, the Nugents, the I mean, there's so many more that kind of I fail to think about right now, but there's so many that came from out of that era, that we celebrated, and we just felt like we were influenced. The Beatles, of course, and the Rolling Stones. Needless to say, I mean, I don't think there's a band on the planet that they haven't influenced or inspired in one way or another.
See, that's the funny thing. It's like
even Thin Lizzy, I mean, these were all bands that we all grew up with, listening to the songs, the style of songs, the positive energy, celebrate life, and in those days it was about, drinking and partying and women and the whole thing, the drugs. Let's just have a great time no matter what. Let life take care of itself. We're going to have a good time. And so in the writing process, that's what we had a blast celebrating those times,
It's funny because I always think of I think of Dead Daisies as not you're kind of like a linking band between the Stones and old hard proper rockers. Like, I mean, when I hear you and I hear Karabi, I sort of think of Joe Cocker. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I think of, and you're the sort of link.
That's a great compliment, man. Yeah, I mean you think of, listen to Woodstock, listen to, you're 35, you're a young cat.
Yeah.
I mean, what was happening then, Karen, it was a vast, the spectrum of music, stylistically speaking and artistically, it was so wide. There was music coming from every side and every genre you can imagine, and it was, every other month you were discovering a new project and a new band.
Discovering new music, discovering new rock and roll. Remember that simple pleasure? We all got to remind ourselves never to get ground down out of that, or at least that's what I think anyway. Right, so I promised you at the start, or should I say threatened, that I might have a bit of guitar nerding here. And since I managed to get hold of Doug Aldrich, I thought it would be just rude not to. So let's dive right in. I've been laying it on thick about what a serious player this guy is, so I just thought it was important to get the benefit of his experience and his techniques. I can always use a guitar pep-up, and I'm sure you can too. So, let's go. What was the thing you learned in the playing of this album? Because you've done it, you've done hundreds of stuff. What did you learn playing guitar in this album? And what is your one tip for all the guitar guys listening to this?
Well, I would say the one thing I learned was that a lot of times when you're rehearsing and laying down tracks, when you're not thinking, you play some of the coolest stuff. And that I need to remember. You have to always make sure when you're rehearsing or whatever it is, just make sure that your guitar's really perfectly in tune, because you might play some brilliant stuff that you'll never play again. But if your guitar's out of tune, then it's not usable. So fortunately on this stuff, we tracked it all together, and I had I made sure that my guitar was in tune before every take, and there was a lot of stuff that I felt like I don't even know what I did because I wasn't thinking about it. I was basically just watching Brian play and just playing guitar along with him, and that's stuff I could do. If I went in and tried to fix it and change it and think about it too much, I would mess it up. So I kind of reverted back to all the basic tracks as the main track, and then either redid it or maybe just left it alone or fixed a couple things on the track, and that's it. And that's what I learned. It was really, I hadn't recorded that way with Whitesnake. It was always, we'd record the drums, and then we'd record the bass, and then the guitars. And everything I've done lately been like that. And this was really cut live as a band, and I learned that it's important to do that. You play your best when you're playing together.
when we see you play in whatever band, in the arena or the club, I mean, you have what I would think of as mastery of the instrument, right? Now, obviously, keen guitarist myself, many years, blah, blah, whatever, but you have mastery of the instrument. Tell me this. We read books about this kind of thing. There's an idea that geniuses aren't geniuses. It's just a 10,000 hour effect. Like Bill Gates isn't a genius. He just spent 10,000 hours at the right place at the right time. Steve Jobs, that kind of thing, or even like Mozart or something. How do you get to do what you do? Would you say, I mean, just what is that X factor that we can all try and reach for? But in your case, what is it? Because, talking to you, it is clear that you can just pull magic out of the hat all the time. So how is it done? What's the secret?
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm still learning, and sometimes I'll see footage of me or hear a recording or something, and I'll think, that's pretty cool, that was okay, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, I didn't like that, Yeah. But then other times I'll see something, and just right from the get-go, I'll be like, I just could have played that so much better, and why didn't I, Because I want it to be better. But to answer your question, the one thing I will say is I put my heart into it, and I love music. So I really feel it, and if I'm lucky, I can get that feeling to get to my fingers and get on the strings. And I'm not a God-given, like I didn't wake up and just like pick up an instrument and just all of a sudden just flourish. I really worked hard at it because I love it so much, and that's how I got to where I am, wherever that is. Sometimes I feel like I'm just lost. I don't know, But I used to notice when I used to teach guitar when I was a kid. I noticed that sometimes when I was feeling really confident and playing really confidently, I wasn't really pushing myself at that point. You'd go through phases where you'd go on a flat plateau, and you wouldn't really be progressing in any way, musically or playing-wise. And so you'd rely on your things that you were comfortable with, and you'd play very confidently. And then other times you'd be learning something new, and you're trying it, and you kind of fit this new thing into your technique or whatever, and you're not quite nailing it yet. So you don't feel very confident, but that's when you're making progress, when you're pushing yourself. Yeah. So I still try to do that. I hear guitar players all the time that I go, whoa, I love that. I love the way that guy plays. Or like Bonamassa, or even this new guy, Jared James Nichols, is great, and I love how he plays. And then another young guy called Nick Perry has got a new band. He sounds amazing. So there's always, new guys that I hear. I'm like, wow, I love that. And then going back and hearing, I just heard some footage from a live outtake of Eddie Van Halen in the studio, not Eruption, but doing something else, and it blew me away. Yeah. He was on fire, man. I mean, you've heard Eruption so many times, we've all kind of become desensitized by how cool it is. Yeah. But anyway, there's beautiful stuff to be learned from any guitar player, man. I'm doing this gig in Vegas right now called Raiding the Rock Vault. It's like a kind of a supergroup cover band in a theater in the Tropicana Hotel, and Rowan Robertson is playing guitar with me right now on it. Rowan was in Dio, and I've known Rowan for years. Never played with him, and I got to say that kid can play, man. He is awesome. You're on stage, right? And you're rock aristocracy at this point, along with the wider sort of Daisies family. You guys have all been there since the late 70s, early 80s. Everything, you've done everything. You can have any guitar you want. You can have any amp you want. What excites you, though? I mean, what are you playing at the minute, and why does that matter to you? Because you can have anything, right? So, what are you playing now? Why does it matter to you? Well, I almost can have everything, but there are those guitars that are in a price category where I can't do it yet. Yeah. But I'm addicted to guitars and buying them. I'm addicted to online shopping now. I'll admit it. I have this thing where at night when I'm winding down, I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to watch the news. I want to go on my phone and look on either eBay, but now especially on Reverb, this thing called Reverb. I don't know if it's in the UK or in Ireland, but it's a website called Reverb, and they sell used instruments. And I just browse through stuff, and so with the Daisies, I was just looking for a guitar that could be kind of a in between acoustic and in between electric. Because sometimes we'll have these shows where it's kind of unplugged, but yet you might want to have one guitar be plugged in for certain songs. And so I wanted to find a Chet Atkins model.
Yeah, those were great.
Steel string.
Yeah.
And I found one, and it just arrived a couple nights ago. I drove back home after a Vegas show and drove back to Los Angeles and got home, and the box was there, and I opened it up. It was 3 a.m, and I was like so excited. That whole feeling of that box being at the house, or the knock on the, or if I'm in the play and I know that it's on the way to be delivered, I'm so excited that day. And so I got this guitar, and I opened it up, and it smelled like an old pub, and cigarettes and everything. And I thought, well, the neck is completely fucked on this thing, and I got a good deal on it, so I'll just have to put some money into it. But I took the strings off, put some new strings, did a neck adjustment, polished it up, and suddenly the neck went straight, and suddenly it looked better, and it didn't smell anymore. And man, it's just a killer guitar.
Dude, you're actually like all of us, all of us peasants that sit on eBay, and the thrill of finding the guitar and then it arriving. It's incredible.
Yeah, man, I love it. And this thing, that guitar, so it's like a really different sound. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been playing. I brought it with me back. I'm sending off some gear next month for the Daisies rehearsal, and so it'll go at that time. But I wanted to bring it back to Vegas and try it. I wanted to play it through the PA and see what it sounds like. And I was showing everybody, and it's so even friends of mine will see, like, I'll go, hey, come here, I want to show you something. And they'll be like, what'd you get? They know.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you get? And then I show them it's an older looking Gibson case, and it's like, whoa, that's not a Les Paul case. Wait, that's a 335? No. And I open it up, it's like, whoa, Chet Atkins, awesome.
And one thing that struck me, anytime I saw you play before, the thing that I came away thinking about you as a guitarist, and the thing that I thought, God, I'll never be able to do that, is you seem absolutely fearless of bends. You don't seem to have any fear of bending a string to almost its extreme break, almost breaking point. What would you say about bending, just for for the guitarists out there? Because you just seem fearless with it.
Well, I know pretty much how far I can go before it breaks.
Yeah.
Just like they say, how far do you want to go? It's like, go as far as you can without breaking it. And but bending is a really, for me, it's an important feeling situation. It really portrays a lot of feeling, and of course you can arrive at that note just by sliding your finger up. But the way in which you bend it really tells a lot about you. And I love the way that certain guys would bend. In the beginning, Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and Hendrix, and Clapton, but really, Jimmy Page and Hendrix and Jeff Beck, those three. Well, I loved how they would bend notes and sometimes overbend things, and the dirty sound of the way that Jimmy Page would do the bending on the solo of Whole Lotta Love, or the slow way that Jeff Beck would bend on 'Cause We Ended as Lovers, or Hendrix all over the place, but it's important, and I'd say that it's something that you just need to do a lot, and then you get more confident with it. But as far as breaking the strings, I use Dunlop strings, and they're really good, man. They really don't pop much.
Another thing about Doug that I just had to talk to him about outside of the Daisies was that he was, of course, Dio's lead guitarist. He was Ronnie James Dio's right-hand man.
Dougie! Shame on you!
It's been a few years now since the death of Ronnie James Dio, heavy metal's undoubted vocal master. So I thought it would be cool just to share some memories with Doug about Ronnie, about being his axeman. What I didn't expect was this tale about Ronnie's slightly strange home life. I'm going to take you back 10 years to 2006. It's the Limelight in Belfast, and you're on stage with Dio. The place was absolutely rammed. There was sweat dripping down the walls, and it was one of the best guitar performances I've ever seen. And it's almost 10 years ago that happened. Do you remember the gig at all?
Yeah, are you talking about it was like a pub, right?
That's right. Yep.
That's the one day where I made a mistake on the intro of Last in Line. The first and only time I ever did that. And Ronnie and I laughed because it was a small stage. I mean, it had a pole right in the middle of the stage, remember?
All Irish pubs have poles in the middle of the stage.
Yeah, remember that. I thought that, I could have sworn that was 2005, though.
Oh, maybe it was. I thought it was. I'm starting to lose.
But no. But anyway, I do remember that gig because we walked in and I thought, wow, Dio is going to play in this pub, you know. And he didn't care. He threw down just like he always does. He played really well.
It was marvelous. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
I know that I was playing for my life.
Yeah. Do you miss him?
Yeah, of course. I mean, even in the end, you know, I was actually starting to work with him a little bit again. He wanted to keep his guys busy and keep his guys working, like Simon Wright and Scott and the crew. So he booked a tour it was going to be starting in the end of the year in 2009, and I happened to be off. And we started rehearsals, and that's when we found out that he had cancer, and it was just, you know, like, okay, the tour's off for one, and then we were hoping that Ronnie was going to get better. But I just, even when the times when I wasn't working with him, I loved to just call him up sometimes, or just text him and say, hey, can I pop over? And, you know, I'm in the neighborhood. He was always at home, and he would either be working on music or listening to sports radio. You know, he loved his football, American football, and all that stuff. So it was, yeah, I definitely miss him. I mean, of course, anybody like that as being a huge musical icon and stuff like that, people are going to always miss him. I miss him also just from the normal Ronnie's stuff,
yeah.
You know, like hearing stories about how, you know, he told me one really funny story. There was a guy next door that was he had a pool in his backyard, his next door neighbor, and Ronnie used to like to do a lot of yard work. You know, he would his house was up on a hill. I don't know if you ever saw a picture of it, but
no.
It was like the only English Tudor house in the neighborhood, and it was up on a hill, and it had a spiral staircase that had I don't know what it's called. So he loved to work on his house, and he was outside, and he looked over at his neighbor, and he caught his neighbor masturbating in his backyard, and he was so pissed off. I mean, it was like a week. He went on a rant for a week, like he wanted to sue the guy and all this stuff, and decent exposure. And we were all told, I don't think he can do that, Ronnie. I think he can do whatever he wants in his backyard. But I mean, he was so disgusted. And of course, you know, you don't want to watch somebody else do that, but if you happen to do that, you turn your head quickly and look away.
Fond memories of a great man. But now back to the present, and the reason we're doing this podcast. The Dead Daisies are coming to Ireland for 2 dates in July. That's the 20th of July. They're coming to Dublin, to the Green Room at the Academy. And the 21st, they're coming to the Limelight in Belfast. Do not miss these gigs. This will be great summer nights drinking music. And of course, the new album's out. It's called Make Some Noise. That comes out at the start of August. We've been playing snippets through this, which I hope you've liked. So why do you want to get to these shows? Well, look, don't take it from me. I'm going to hand you back to bassist Marco Mendoza.
You're going to get one of the best rock and roll freaking, if you want to put the label classic rock and roll, whatever label, classic rock and roll shows that you can get these days. That's the bottom line. That's where we all come from. That's the flag we're flying. And we insist on having a good time on stage. Absolutely. We got some good songs. Again, I say this, without sounding pretentious in any way. We got some great songs. We got some great players. We are hungry and we are starving. We want to make a difference out there in the marketplace and in the music industry. And so far, it looks like we've been doing okay. So Ireland and Dublin and Belfast have always been one of my favorite cities. I've spent so much time there. I've spent a lot of time in Limerick. I've spent a lot of time in Dublin, and Cork, Belfast. I mean, I love Ireland, absolutely Ireland. And I'll tell you, I've also played the limelight with my solo project.
And I think, were you there with Black Star Riders, or was that maybe...
I was there with Black Star Riders, but I played there with my solo project as well. And we played there countless of times with Whitesnake, with Daisies. We even played there with Soul Circus with Neil Sean, So, no, I'll tell you, we're gonna absolutely have a great time and be reminiscent of, of the 70s and 80s music, which is a great time in music.
Do what we want. It's do or die, and that's your show in Mexico.
And I guess the last word has to go to one of my own unashamed guitar heroes, Mr. Doug Aldrich.
I know that Marco, for example, is a character on stage, and I see how he works with people. And me and David Lowy just kind of are bouncing around, playing, having fun. Krabi really is an expert at working the crowd. I was blown away because I'd seen him sing, but I never actually been on stage with him until a few months ago. We were in Germany, and man, he just really he was amazing. Tishy is a joy to watch anytime. So yeah. I think it's going to be a fun night for the people that come out, and anybody that has the opportunity to visit Belfast or other parts of Ireland, but especially Belfast and Dublin, those are the two obvious places. Belfast is such an amazing city, great people and great, food and beer. I mean, everything. It's just an honor to be able to go there, and I'm really excited to think that I'll be there again. So soon. I was there last summer for a show with Glenn Hughes. But this is going to be awesome.
So that's it for another episode of the Metal Insight podcast, produced and reported by MetalIreland.com. I really get in depth and really heavy into the music on some of these Metal Insight podcasts, especially the more underground ones, and we've got plenty more of that coming up. But this one was just a bit of a blast, and that's just why I dig the Daisies. They're easy, they're straightforward, they just kill, they just rock. They remind me of like the Wandering Dogs and bands like that. Just really great, highly talented rock musicians, just kicking it. So that's it, over and out. If you want to get your message out there through the Metal Insight podcast, just email me, mi@metalireland.com. That's mi@metalireland.com. We'll be back real soon, and till then, over and out.